city or a town, a frown. The business of a crown, of the living that abounds, of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts, the underground sound in a city or a town, a frown. The business of a crown, of the living that abounds, of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts. The underground sound is the voice within, to give ear to the spirit and to flee from sin, to live for Jesus in the praise of Him, by not selling out for the praise of men, to do whatever it takes, no matter what the cost, to keep pushing up the weight, carrying the cross, straight bench pressing sin, defend the word that lacks, and your best mention Him, or then you gon' die. Cause the underground sound in a city or a town, the business of a crown, of the living that abounds, of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts, the underground sound in a city or a town, a frown.
Thank you for watching today's podcast, Marvelous Marty Gallagher. If you'd like to support a project that I'm working on, trying to get Julius Maddox, the world record bench press holder, to Pete Rubish's gym so that they could do some workouts together and make some content. Just trying to raise funds to pay for the trip, pay for gas, pay for the hotel, and pay for the food. That's, probably going to be $500, something like that. If you email me at scottgotgod@gmail.com, you could purchase my book, Scott Strong. It's a good workout program for you to get stronger. Or you could buy my mixed martial arts book. This is my own personal journey through mixed martial arts. Just let me know that you want to support that cause in your email. You want to purchase the book. Either book's $20, and that covers mailing costs and everything. I'll mail it out to you right away. Or you can go to Pete Rubish's YouTube channel. Just go on to YouTube, look up Pete Rubish. Let him know you want to support the project, and sign up for personal training from Pete Rubish himself. He offers personal training online coaching, particularly if you want to compete in powerlifting. That's the way to go. He's a great coach. Or you can go to Julius Maddox, and he offers programs as well that you can purchase. Just look him up. He's Irregular Strength on YouTube or on Instagram, on whatever social media platform. Also, get Marty Gallagher's book, The Purposeful Primitive, just to support him. It's a great book. And he offers online coaching as well. So if you want to sign up with Marty Gallagher, he has trained some of the strongest people in the world. All great options. So thank you for watching, and enjoy the show. All right, I'm here live with Marty, the legend Gallagher, and he was just saying he likes my fan bike and that he just wrote an article on fan bikes.
Sure enough. Yeah, that's a old school retro tool. The elite love the fan bike because, number one, you can spread the cardio effort between arms and legs, right?
Yeah.
That's the obvious one. But equally as important is that you can go in reverse. So all of a sudden you're able to work the posterior chain and you double your exercise menu.
Wow, you know what? I've never tried that. You actually pedal backwards?
Backwards, man.
I've never even given that a try.
And what you do is I believe you have a watch reading and an RPM reading on your LED readout.
Yeah.
So what we do is we've created 20 separate fan bike drills where you set a PR watts or RPM record in the drill. You log it. Then over time, you try to improve upon each of these fan bike PRs. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, where can people find that article?
Well, you got to go to ironcompany.com, man. Every week I post an article. Every week we do a podcast.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I've listened to your podcast. The once a week training, that's the big thing you've been on for a while, right? Is that
it's just another arrow in the quiver?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have to have, you have to have a whole bundle of effective routines that you rotate on a periodic basis. You know what I mean? Once a week training is one of them. Super effective, man. Well, I got introduced to once a week training seriously back in 1989. I had to work a hellacious. I was ramrodding a warehouse, and I had like 25 derelicts working for me. So between Monday at 6 a.m. and Friday at 9 a.m., I had no time. Because I had to deal with this, intense work situation. I had no energy. So, but as it turned out, Ken Fantano, who's a legendary strength guy, was up, and this is in West Haven, Connecticut. I lived in Milford, Connecticut at the time. The warehouse was Connecticut Warehouse and Steel, which was in Milford, which is actually where Subway started. Little Subway, Subway chain.
Yeah.
They started their first little shop was in Milford, Connecticut. So weird.
I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah, I know. Now you know. See, we're educating you as we move along from fan bikes to one-to-week training. So Kenny was in the same boat. He had the gym, the Muscle Factory, but he didn't like to train during the week when he had to deal with customers. And you know what I mean? It was a commercial facility. So everybody would show up. He'd shut the gym to the public on Sunday, and we'd all show up, and we'd squat, we'd bench, we'd deadlift. Right? Now, Ken would come back like Wednesday, and he would do heavy incline dumbbell press. I wouldn't do anything. But, I won the Connecticut State drug-free. I was drug-free championship that year. And I squatted at 220. I squatted 660 and benched 374, whatever the kilo was, and deadlifted 683. Again, if in classical powerlifting, it's been a long time where we've only been doing the lifts once a week, right? We only squat, bench, and deadlift once a week, and we've been doing that since the 80s. Right, whether it's Eddie Cohn or Kirk or Doug Furness or you'd hit the squat, the bench, the deadlift once a week, usually on separate days. Right, you'd have like a 3-day rolling power split.
Yeah,
and all Kenny did was, okay, so we're gonna, and I got this with Hugh Cassidy. I trained with world champion Hugh Cassidy for 5 years, and then I trained with Mark Chalet for 6 years, world champion and world record holder in the deadlift. And we'd bench, we'd squat. We'd always start the training week with squat. Right, squat would be on Monday. Bench, Mark would pair up squat and bench on Monday, and then he'd deadlift Thursday. That was it. Cassidy would do squat and bench on squat, bench, deadlift, plus overhead pressing and arms twice a week. That was murderous. That was like my power boot camp. But we had to cut that in half. We couldn't, once you got past a certain strength level, you couldn't do that. You couldn't hit. You can't rep squat 750 twice a week.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you laugh, but I mean, it's true. I mean, if you're hit, if you're scheduled to hit whatever 7:55 for 5, you know what, and then you're going to do 3 days later, you're going to do 7:65 for 5 or whatever's the next scheduled periodized number on your routine. No, you need a full 7 days to recover.
Yeah.
Plus, the squat and the dead work so many of the same muscles, the hips, the abs, the upper thighs. There's so many of the same muscles the squat and the dead work. You're really particularly the way we squat and dead. We have very archetypical, precise techniques, and our squat technique and our deadlift technique are very similar. They're combined and connected, intertwined.
You know, I love what you're saying about a job. You know, you're talking about how you were working, because you don't hear people talk a whole lot about that. It's almost like people just talk about training as if everyone's a professional that gets paid to just train full time. But that's such a huge factor.
Yeah.
Is what kind of job that you have, and that's like super creative of you to do that. You know, to train 1 day a week while you were working.
Well, I mean, it was necessity was the mother of invention. We were forced into it, and we just found out that it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it was just coincidental that it actually turned out to be the best way. I had a recent revelation where I reread the great sprint coach Charlie Francis's book, Speed Trap, and he had breakthrough moments in how he trained sprinters. He trained Ben Johnson, right? He learned from all the top Iron Curtain sprint coaches. And their whole thing was, is that you only run a sprinter all out when they're completely rested. Okay.
Because that's when they could perform at their highest level.
Well, the way that you get faster is you run at 102% when you're 100% rested.
Mm.
And they said there's no sense running 5 days a week at 102% of 83% capacity.
Wow. Yeah.
Because you're always fatigued. Because you're running every damn day. Like if you had a scholarship to UCLA, what are they going to do? They're going to make you run sprints every day because you're on scholarship, right? And there are the Russians and the Eastern Europeans and the guys who created guys like Valery Bortsov, you know, who beat everybody's ass at the 68 Olympic Games. Like a machine. And, you know, they said, that's crazy. You know, find something else for them to do. You know, have them lift weights or do long strength work or something different, but you only run them all out when they're completely rested. So, you know, we were carrying that over into lifting. It's like, oh, we're only going to lift really heavy when we're totally rested, right? We thought we were resting. Like if you squat on Monday and you bench on Wednesday and you deadlift on Friday, and okay, you double up. So I don't know, on squat day you maybe do leg curls and calf raises, and then on bench day you do arms, right? And then on deadlift day do some shoulder presses, right? There's a great 3-day power split. And we thought, well, that's great because you're resting your muscles. You're hitting your legs on Monday and you're not hitting them again until the following Monday. Well, wasn't really true because on Thursday you were stressing them with your deadlifts to a degree. And you were never resting your back because even though you were deadlifting on Thursday, every Monday you were squatting, you're stressing your back and the same muscles again. So
yeah.
Every 3 days, you were whacking yourself. Right.
Yeah.
So Fantano inadvertently invented, well, we can't train during the week, but as it turns out, it's like, don't throw me into that briar patch. It's like, because, train the body together, rest the body together.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. That's how I try to train personally. I got a lot of my best results kind of training the Dorian Yates style. Like
Yeah.
when I started doing less volume
Yeah.
and intensity, and I would do my warm ups and focus on a top set.
Yep.
And for me personally, that I got really good results from that. Whereas like the high volume kind of burned me out.
Because you got stronger.
Yeah. Yes.
Stronger leads. That's see, all that lifters ever strove to do was get stronger in the 3 lifts. Muscle and size was just like an unintended consequence. You get stronger and everything naturally happens. Everything good comes from that. Bodybuilders try to get bigger, they forget. Dorian took it the other way. He said, forget about, let's all get bigger, because you're just pumping up. You're just using those bodybuilder tactics like, Arnold back in the day with whatever, 4 exercises per body, 4 different types of curls, 5 sets, huge amount of volume. And Dorian was like, train like a power lifter, and you'll end up with muscle like Kazmar or Kowalski or Cash, or those were the giants. Back in those days, the bodybuilders were small. There were guys like Chris Dickerson won 2 Olympias with a 16.5-inch arm.
Wow, that's a good point. I never thought about how small those guys actually were.
Or Frank won Olympias with 17-inch arms. Arnold once called Zane. He said, well, what's your opinion of Frank's physique? He said, a chicken with 17-inch arms.
Yeah, he was he was like 180 pounds or something.
Yeah, but at 5'9", he wasn't like he was 5'2". Yeah, no, he couldn't win the Miss Olympia before they stopped it. No, I'm serious. They had more muscle before they finally killed female bodybuilding, thank God.
Yeah, that was
it's a monstrosity at the end, right?
I wasn't a fan of it.
Well, it deserved to die.
It just wasn't feminine. It was masculine.
Really?
You should celebrate the feminine, right? That's what it should be if you have a woman.
Yeah, I'm not looking to go to a strip club. That's not what we're talking about. But I'm just saying that it's just like, come on. Kind of lost our way after, I would say, my favorite was Corey, but I like Linda Murray too. I thought Linda Murray was a good kind of the outer limit combination. Corey Everson to me she was a functional athlete. She was a scholarship athlete at the University of Wisconsin on a track scholarship.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. I don't know much about those women's competitors.
I don't either.
I've seen Steffi Cohen, the female powerlifter. She's impressive.
Yeah, I know. I don't know nothing about female lifters.
Okay, yeah. She's just a recent kind of powerlifter she's very strong, but
that's great.
You brought up a sprint coach. I don't know much about it.
Charlotte Francis.
Can you explain like speed training and stuff like that? Did you guys do that?
Yeah, well, anytime you think of strength, you should subdivide it into like 3 generalized categories. I would say you have your absolute strength, which should be exemplified by your powerlifters. And that is, maximum payload lifted for relatively short distances with no regard for velocity. Then in the middle, you have your explosive strength. That would be best exemplified by your Olympic lifters. And they use moderate payloads with maximum velocity over long ranges of motion. Okay. Yeah. Also, the Olympic lifters, they throw away the negative. The power lifters, we worship the negative. We embrace the negative. The negative is key to building our size and our muscle. The Olympic lifters don't do negative. They just drop it. They don't want that. And then at the extreme right, you would have your strength endurance people, like sprinting, like picking up a 100-pound heavy bag and running up a hill like an MMA guy. Like MMA training, anything where you're injecting an element of muscular exertion into an aerobic format, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
That was one of the subjects I wanted to ask you about. Is that how an MMA fighter should train?
Well, I think the MMA fighters have definitely got it covered when it comes to the strength endurance, because that's what they live on. I mean, I was friends with Mark Coleman, UFC Hall of Fame fighter, and when Mark was UFC champion, he would do things like it. He would train at the Ohio State Wrestling room, and he'd have like 5 fresh guys rotate in each minute for 30 minutes. So, he's got to deal with a fresh opponent every minute, 5 different guys, and keep that up for 30 minutes. Now, that's strength endurance, right? Yeah. Again, my example, I saw, I forget who it was, one of the big MMA guys, he put a 100-pound heavy bag on his shoulder and ran up some hill in the desert. Yeah, that's sustained strength, right?
Yes, yeah.
An extended session with a kettlebell could be sustained strength, right? So, I think the MMA guys are making a mistake by just practicing the sustained strength. And they go, we don't need that absolute strength. We don't need that type of strength. Well, I think that's a mistake because, Mike Tyson and Sugar Ray Leonard are the same height, 5'11". So what's the difference? Well, Tyson outweighs Sugar Ray. Ray was 154 pounds. Tyson, at his peak, was 218. Same height. So what was the difference? It was that powerhouse muscle. So, yeah, if you just stick with the sustained strength, you can get a great Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler type of physique. But if you want that knockout power, you got to have a little of that absolute strength.
Yeah, to build some size on you. That's how you get bigger then.
Well, I think power helps. I think strength helps. I think, being stronger makes any athlete better. Doesn't necessarily mean just because you get stronger, you got to get fatter. Right?
Yeah. If you just build solid muscle, it's just going to make you more durable, more powerful, everything.
Any athlete that somehow figures out a way to miraculously become stronger and leaner automatically becomes better. I don't care if it's badminton or football, you know what I mean? Yeah. You figure out a way to get significantly stronger and significantly leaner, you're going to be significantly better. I don't care who you are. How do you do that? You got to have, I think there's 4 elements. I think there has to be a progressive resistant element. I think there has to be a cardiovascular element, a nutritional element, and a psychological element, which we call brain training. You can't just stay within one athletic discipline and expect to raise your whole game. Right. You can't just be a power lifter, because I know plenty of big, fat, strong power lifters that can't walk up 3 flights of stairs.
Yeah.
You can't just be a cardio athlete, because I know plenty of cardio athletes that can't deadlift 150 pounds.
Yeah.
You can't just be an Olympic lifter, because I know plenty of Olympic lifters who look like they should be valets parking your car at the restaurant. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, boys, get a little bit of muscle, have a decent meal or something,
Yeah, they don't build the muscle because they're just using their technique, right?
Correct. And, well, also the explosiveness. They're great with the explosiveness, and I love that. But I think optimally, I think we want a little bit of everything. Better to have a little of all three than too much of any one.
And then you said the other aspect is a mental.
Well, don't forget nutrition. Don't gloss over that. You got to synchronize the nutrition with the training. Got to have cardio, right? You can't just lift, right? You have to have a cardio element in there somehow, some way. It could be. I talked to a guy today. We talked about it. He said, "I can't stand doing this type of that cardio, and blah blah blah. They shut my gym down. I don't have access to my whatever recumbent bike." And I knew this guy for 20 years. I said, "Davey, you used to be a boxer." I said, "Get at the jump rope, dude. Put up the speed bag. Put up the top and bottom bag. Put up the heavy bag. Let's go. Let's get back into some man cardio. Get off the sissy Oh, they shut the gym down. Oh, so sad. Can't get the recumbent bike anymore. Probably also can't get to the hammer double isolation overhead chest press and combination row machine. Oh my God, he's going to have to do power cleans."
Yeah, it's interesting how people get so into the gym.
Machines are seductive.
Yeah, and
I love them
because it's supposed to improve your life, right? I mean, your life.
Wow. We've all gone back to 1963.
Okay, so some of your influences in your book, The Purposeful Primitive.
That book.
I'm here. I'll put it right here so people can see. They can't read that, but the first guy you wrote about, I'm a huge fan of Paul Anderson. And
Paul, yep.
Yeah, just go off.
I talked to him toward the end. He had he got what they call Bright's disease, which is some sort of, I think it's a kidney something or other, but it's like something you were born with, I think. So anyway, when I was working for Muscle and Fitness at the end, I was a training editor there, and we did a couple articles with him, but they were kind of formal. But he gave me his home phone number, so I called him up, and we would talk kind of off the record at length, and got a lot of interesting information. It was like he felt that at his peak, he felt very strongly he could have won the 1964 and 68 Olympics, based on his current strength level compared to the Russians won at the time in 64. Shabatinsky won at Tokyo. 68, did Shabatinsky win again? Yeah, I think he did. I think Shabatinsky won 2 Olympics. Anderson felt pretty strongly he could have put him away. So he felt he could have won 2 more Olympic titles. He really got a raw deal from the AAU at the time. He was insanely strict, and they had all these white bread dudes in suits from the 1950s. It was like out of Mad Men, and the slightest infraction, and you got banned from athletics, and in the country. It was insane, and they had like snitches and snoops around, and oh man, it was and it was already, and the Russians were cheating their asses off. I mean, they were so state sponsored, and they were getting drugged up, and I mean, the playing field was already unleveled.
Yeah, because the Russians, they could just get paid to train, right? Amateur.
Amateur. They weren't amateur. They found them. They culled elementary schools looking for genetically superior kids. One of their tests was the standing broad jump. I can't remember what the others. They had a whole series of tests, and they'd go out into the elementary schools, and they'd find the farm boys and all the genetically superior kids, and they'd take them to centralized locales in the region. Now, from the region, they'd have to make the cut regionally, and if then they would compete nationally, and the guys that cut it on the national level, they got taken to Moscow and they got put up and housed. And eventually, when it got up to the international level, they were drugging them. They were drugging the hell out of them. Now, the athletes didn't know it. And at the time, it was very, I don't know, elemental. But from I mean, we're talking from like 1956 onward.
Yeah. Have you seen that movie Icarus, the documentary?
Yeah.
That thing changed my whole mind about everything. I never knew. I was kind of one of those very naive people that thought everybody was natural or whatever.
Oh God, no.
And I saw that thing. I was like, oh my God, everybody's on stuff. There's no one that isn't.
You couldn't compete at any level and not be on. I'm sorry. Everybody has this myth that, there's some natural Superman out there that can just float to the top. Now, the closest to that, I'll put an asterisk next to that. I'll tell you who consistently was able to drug-free compete with the best drugged Iron Curtain athletes were the American African Americans in the sprints. Oh my God! And you had guys like Bob Hayes from Florida A&M coming out and running a 9-1 100-yard dash and just crushing the entire world in 1964. And the Russians were sending all these drugged Drago robots up against this guy, and he was just mowing them down. He could be smoking a cigarette and beating these guys.
Is it because of genetics? Is that?
Yes, absolutely.
They have. So, do you think genetics is the most important factor in success for a sport?
Well, it depends what level.
At the highest level.
Well, of course. At the highest level, everybody has the genetics. Otherwise, they wouldn't be at the highest level. So then it's like, okay, everybody's got great genetics. Everybody's really fast. Everybody's got a 40-inch vertical leap. Everybody's, So now what? Well, then it becomes into, who's the nastiest? Who's the, wants it bad enough? Who's got the ability to adhere, to overcome injury, you know what I mean? Then you get the mental part of it coming into play, right? Again, at the level where everybody's got all the best stuff, and that's in the NBA and the NFL and elite soccer, wherever the biggest money is, that's where the best athletes are, period.
So I read the book, I have that book, The Mightiest Minister, about Paul Anderson. I think Randall Strawson wrote it.
Yeah.
Is that stuff? So what do you think about, Paul Anderson doing 800-pound squats for 10 reps and stuff like that? Do you think that's legit, or the 1,200-pound squats?
Yeah. I had seen him in action myself. I've seen him lift. I saw him lift at the Silver String Boys Club in, 1965. And at the time, and he used our weights. He was on a Barnstorm tour, and he was at his peak. 1965, 1966. I'm 15, 16 years old boy, and 15-year-old, I believe. So he came through, and this is he's trying to raise money to purchase and establish a youth home in Vidalia, Georgia. Was it Vidalia or Valacosta? I think it was Valacosta, Georgia. Anyway, so he was representing the Fellowship for Christian Athletes. So he was barnstorming. And what that meant is that he would go from city to city to city to city to city to city to city, usually in conjunction with an Olympic lifting competition. And they would have, so the way that they promoted in my neighborhood is we had, at the Silver Spring Boys Club, we had the Region 2 AAU Olympic lifting championships, along with the Mr. Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah.
So now they got Paul in order to bring more people into that event. They brought Paul Anderson in. And they said, special guest attraction, Paul Anderson, world's strongest man. So they filled that damn high school, right?
Yeah, because everyone wants to see this
freaking. Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm lifting, so I got backstage. I'm backstage with the guy, and I'm right there, right? I'm a young Olympic lifter. So
excited right now here.
And he started with the overhead press. That was his thing. And he warmed up. At the time, the world record in the overhead press was 418 pounds by Yuri Vlasov of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And
he warmed up really quick. And I don't know, he started with like, I don't know, maybe it's like 245, 335, 385, 405. And then he hit a very easy 420. And this is in the clean and pressed. And again, at the time, the world record is 418. Now, later in the same tour, he did 445. But you got to remember, he was doing this every 3 days.
Wow. So he's hitting over the world record.
Yeah. In like 27 stops in 60 days. Right. Oh, but he's not done. Now, I had his combat boots on to do presses, and he came out and he had a bathing suit on, like a stretchy bathing suit, and he had a T-shirt on and said Christian Fellowship Athlete. No lifting belt, nothing. And that's how he cleaned and pressed the 420. Very wide grip, too. A freaky wide grip. But he's was my height. I'm 5'10", and he was weighing 360. But he was hard to the touch, right? I mean, he was like I mean, he was. Yeah, he had a big gut, but he was quite spry. He was quite nimble. Reminded me of Jackie Gleason. You ever seen Jackie Gleason dance? The big man who just moved really quickly like a cat.
The name sounds familiar, but I actually don't know who that is.
Yeah, that's terrible. Anyway, on we go. Yeah, on we go. Look it up. Jackie Gleason, incredible comedian. So then it was time for him to squat. So he'd already exceeded the world record in the squat. So he had a special squat bar. It had it was a 7-foot bar, and but it had a curve in it, and around the curve he had like a blanket or a quilt, right, to soften the weight on the shoulders. So he came out with a special bar, and he used our weight, and that day he worked up to 900 for 5.
Wow.
And it was just like bang, 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 bang. All right, thank you very much.
And did he do that with like no belt on too?
Yeah, no.
No belt, no knee wraps.
Yeah. You can pull up YouTube video of him walking out 1,200 pounds with safes, wearing his at the Las Vegas. What was it? Was it Sparks? I can't remember. There was a casino. He did it like 5 nights a week, and he walked out a special bar with 2 safes filled with silver dollars, and it was 1,200 pounds. And he'd walk it out and squat it down and rack it. And he did that 5 nights a week because that's what they paid him to do. And they didn't care about recovery or, you know what I mean? But for him, it was money.
And his cause, right? His
whatever. But, again, he was built for it. He had bones like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Right. And he was smart guy. I mean, he was obsessed with training, and he was very innovative. He was doing crazy stuff like hanging upside down and doing curls and reverse rows and experimenting with reverse inclines for blood flow. And he invented the the partial. He invented rack training because he dug a hole. He had two 55-gallon oil drums that were filled with concrete, and he had a bar between them. And he started out with a deep hole, and then over time he'd throw dirt in the hole until there was no more hole.
The 50-gallon drums, right, was filled with concrete.
55 gallon.
55, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so genius that he did that.
That was the invention of the power rack. That was the invention of partial rep training.
Yeah, and he would increase the range of motion, right, rather than increase weight.
Yeah, but just hillbilly logic.
Yeah, hillbilly logic. But it worked for him. I mean, he did have like the biggest hips I've ever seen too, right? His hips were so.
Yeah, but you see a lot of country people built like he's built. What he did, and this is what he did that kind of he dedicated his life to, is he kind of took on, in addition to lifting the heavy weights, he had no problem. He was always trying to gain body weight. And he didn't care how he looked or about dating girls or his beach abs. He just kept getting bigger, and he got up to, he was drinking 14 quarts of whole milk a day.
Man, that would be hard.
Really? That's very perceptive. 14 quarts. That would be a problem for you?
Oh, I did that milk challenge once where you try to drink a gallon in 10 minutes. It turned into poison by the end of it.
Yeah, well, no, this is every day, 7 days a week, month after month. Okay? This is sumo stuff. Right, you know how the sumo wrestlers stuck there themselves with that concoction of fish and rice, and then they drink sake and they take naps, and everything's about you're either training, you're eating, or you're sleeping.
Yeah.
And that's your life. And they're okay with that. And that was the end of the thing. I'm not going to get many girlfriends looking like this, but you know what? I'm going to ride this ride as far as I can. And he just kept going, and he ate his way through every sticking point.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he seemed like a very confident person, too, like that was very comfortable with himself. When I see videos, he didn't seem, like you said.
He was kind of a hard ass.
Was he really?
Yeah, well, behind the scenes. He was tough with those kids. He ran a youth home. It was for, quote, I'm putting my air quotes up, troubled youth.
Yeah.
So they had some troubled youth, but they weren't troubled enough, as Glenda said, for anything Paul couldn't handle.
Yeah, he's the strongest man in the world.
And he wasn't preaching Christian ministry to them.
He wasn't.
No. He was not when they acted out.
He was disciplined.
Correct. As he himself was back in his day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different era.
Did powerlifting not exist then?
Correct. Yeah, it didn't exist until 1964, I think, is when they AAU got together and said, hey, let's formalize this thing. And they brought Anderson in, and he helped them.
What kind of numbers do you think he would have put up if there was official powerlifting in when he was at his peak?
I would say he would duplicate his 1200 squat. I believe that. I believe he would bench 600, and I believe he would deadlift 800. He had weird hands and a grip problem. He had this condition where one of his fingers was actually, I don't know, he'd been in some sort of farm accident or something, and one of his fingers was straight all the time. If you look at any picture of Anderson doing a clean or a deadlift, one of his fingers will be sticking straight out. And the nerve was injured in such a way that he only had 9 fingers to grab whatever it is he was grabbing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a problem. He push pressed in Venice Beach in, I think, 1964. Might have been later than that. Maybe 1966. He took out of the squat rack, stepped back, stood up, and push pressed overhead 560.
So you're saying he would still have the all-time world record to this day if there would have been...
In what? The press? No. They pushed... Alexiev pushed the press record up to 526.
No, I mean in powerlifting. Because if he did...
powerlifting? I don't know.
Because that would be...
against the all... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a big-ass squat. But I tell you what, we got a lot of guys deadlifting 1,000. So there's 200 back. Not 1,000. You got a lot of guys deadlifting 900. So there's 100 back. And his bench was good, but you got a lot of guys that were... Yeah, he would have been... very, very competitive. Would he have been the best ever? I don't know. He was a squatter who was a good bencher and a good deadlifter. But deadlift is okay. 800 at his body weight. I mean, a lot of guys can do that. And at 360, you're not scaring anybody with an 800. At weighing 360, you're not scaring anybody with a 600 bench raw or an 800 deadlift, especially an 800 deadlift.
Yeah.
Giant squat, yeah.
That puts you up there ahead of the pack to start off anyways.
Well, I think we peaked out probably in the 1990s as humans. I think if you look back at the all-time Olympic lift records, all the all-time Olympic lift records were set in the 90s. The powerlifters, no one... Yeah, they've got the inflation because of the gear and the monoliths and the corrupted judging. But if you look at the legitimate raw lifts, no one's exceeded anything Ed Cohn's done, or Doug Furness has done, or Kaz has done, or Jim Cash has done, or Kirk Karwoski's done, or Lamar Gant's done. Yeah, they're not even close.
Now, competitively, Ed Cohen he's the greatest powerlifter ever, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, he just whooped everybody's ass for for his whole career.
Well, it was weird. Eddie was not a genetic freak. I mean, he was a 98-pound kid in high school.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but he was suited for powerlifting, and he got onto it early. And it just, he was the right guy for the right sport at the right time. But he just took off to the point. I have pictures of him standing. He's like standing next to Hall of Fame guys. He's standing next to Doug Furness, who at the time Doug was 5'10" and 275 with abs. And he was next to Doyle Kennedy, who was the super heavyweight IPF world champion at the time. And Doyle's 5'10" and 330 and looks great. And Fred Hatfield's there, and Fred's at his biggest. Fred's 5'7", and he's weighing 245. And who else? Jeff Magruder was there, and Jeff's got a 630-pound raw bench press. And there's little Ed Cohn standing there with him. And you're looking at Cohn and you're going, and he's lifted more than any of these guys.
Wow. That's amazing.
I know. Crazy, right?
He's got some paws, though, right? He's got
Yeah.
He didn't have those grip problems like Anderson.
No. Yeah, it's just strange and weird. I mean, it was like, you have individuals like that in different sports. I mean, if you look at football, you've got guys like Jim Brown, or basketball, Wilt Chamberlain, right? Just really, or who else? Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Just athletically, Michael Jordan, guys that are just so superior to everyone else. It's like they're from a different race. It's like completely, and that's what Cohn was in lifting. Eddie was at his peak. At his peak, the other best lifters in the world in the 220-pound class were at the 2,100 pound total level. And these were Hall of Fame guys. These were guys like Joe Ladnier, Fred Hatfield, Jim Cash, Larry Pacifico. And those were guys that were lifting at 220, and they were totaling 2,100, right?
Yeah.
Cohn was totaling 2,400.
That's ridiculous.
It was better than the best super heavyweight in the world at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's still only, I don't know how many people have surpassed that total.
Well, but Eddie was just doing it essentially raw.
Yeah, yeah.
No bench shirt. He didn't need he used the belt in the deadlift, but I mean, big deal. He didn't use a squat suit in the deadlift. And in the squat, I mean, he used knee wraps and a belt, and the suit that he used was this loose, ridiculous. I can't remember if it was a George Angus or a Titan or whatever the suit was at the time, but the suit didn't add anything back then.
Yeah.
And again, all squats were below parallel, buddy. If you're in the IPF, it's real simple. Either your squats are absolutely below parallel or they flunk it. Same with the USPF. Very simple.
Yeah,
no gray areas. If you're in the gray zone, flunk it.
Well, that definitely seemed to be your guy's style because, I mean, Kirk, that guy squatted freaking ass to heels.
That's right.
And I mean, Eddie did too. He had a
well,
little fighter stance.
And Kirk learned from me, and I learned from Hugh Cassidy.
Who was an Olympic lifter, right?
No, Hugh was Hugh was the first super heavyweight world powerlifting champion.
Oh. How did you get plugged in with all these guys? Like, how did this happen?
I lived in a geographic hotbed of strength athletes. I grew up like in the Gracie family, but for strength.
That's awesome. Where was that at then? Where?
Suburban Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. Maryland, but Hugh lived in the country in Maryland, and York was, 70 miles away.
And how did you get into powerlifting originally?
Because powerlifting got invented, and I was a good Olympic lifter.
So you started with the speed training and.
Yeah, I was a national champion at age 17.
Wow. And then, but how did you transfer to powerlifting?
Just started benching and deadlifting.
Did you see a competition though, or what introduced it to you?
They started holding meets, and I started going in and kicking ass.
And then you preferred it?
Because I had Olympic, I wasn't going to be a great Olympic lifter. My technique was just so raw. I didn't have good technique, but I could power up that weight, man. And I was a great presser and a really good cleaner. I could power clean some weight. So when powerlifting came along, that more suited my talents.
And then how did you get connected to Eddie and Kirk?
Well, Kirk was a kid that I started working with when he was like 16 or 17 years old. He was our weight changer, He was the kid we allowed to.
He was?
What are you laughing at? I mean, that's what it was. I mean, he apprenticed. We were grown men. He was a young boy.
Wow.
Right. So he was raised in it.
It's just weird to think because, that guy, I was a kid watching, this stuff, and that guy was crazy, just seeing him squat is wow.
That's right. He's Frankenstein, and I'm Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah. I liked I thought style was a cool thing, and Kirk's squat, just the way it looked really cool. It was almost like a bodybuilder.
That's right. That's exactly the way we squat. We squat upright, torso, vertical shins, all leg, And that's how you get 33-inch thighs. All leg, no forward bend at all. Upright.
Now, Eddie was a little bit more over, or?
Yeah, Ed was in Chicago, and Ed and I, we used to talk. We used to talk for hours each week, and this is when he was at his peak. Ed is a great trainer. He's so scientific. He's so smart. He's not a genetic wonder. Everybody says, "Oh, Ed's so gifted. He's so great." Well, yeah, he does have certain genetic gifts, but he has a genius for training. And the way that he strength trains, to me, it's the highest form of the art. Now, I will say his is more volume than what we do, but we do the same stuff. He just does a little more of it. Right. We don't do, whereas we'll stop, we just will squat. We might squat, we might do some leg curls, we might do some calf raises, but Ed will do a lot more leg assistance, a lot more chest assistance. His style is almost like, I don't know, power bodybuilding.
Yeah.
He would do like weighted chins, I don't know, 3 sets of 8 with a 200-pound dumbbell strapped to his waist.
Jeez.
Yeah. He used to have guys stand on his toes when he did tricep pushdowns because he'd launch into the air with only the 200-pound stack.
Dang, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. 400-pound press behind the neck, 350 for 5, weighing 220.
That's unreal.
Yeah. On and on it goes. I mean, just his stats were incredible, and it was just, and I was there. I coached him at his 2 biggest competitions. I coached him when he first broke 2,400, and I coached him when he broke the all-time total record. I was his coach. It's like running a pit crew. It's like being in a Formula One race, and you're he's the driver running the car, and I'm the guy running the pit crew. So, got to deliver him on stage on time. He can't, he's got to be delivered for his first attempt, not too warm, not cold, just right. What's his next attempt? There's just so many things that go into it. But, I was like Forrest Gump. I was there at these incredible strength things, Amazing. Now,
were you competing as well, or were you just coaching at that point?
No, I competed. I won the IPF World Masters title. I took gold in '92 in Australia. I took silver in Toronto at the IPF World Championships. I took bronze in Slovakia in the 242-pound class at the IPF World Championships. I was 6-time national champion, USPF Masters champion.
You went to Slovakia to compete?
Yeah.
Wow.
At the IPF World Championships, World Masters Championships.
What kind of numbers did you lift?
Set a national age group record at age 46 at the 220-pound class. I squatted 722.
Wow.
That was tested, and that was below parallel.
Wow. That's awesome. So Ed, he seemed too like he's pretty conservative, like because he's known for not missing weights, right? Was that part of your guys' thing?
Oh yeah, he's a very, 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 very conservative in terms of both his training, poundage jumps, and also in competition. He's just very, very realistic. And again, now listen, I hate to part good company, but I've got a European phone call coming in. Why don't we continue this conversation? We can just pick it up, and I'll be happy to pick it up with your folks. And if they find this, interesting, let's just do it again. We can have another conversation next week.
That would be great, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marty. Have a good day, bro.
But you enjoyed it? More on the right track with this?
Yeah, this was great.
God, good. All right, well, good. And thank you for having me on. And again, we'll get together and we'll, anything that comes to mind that you want to flush out, check out the book and see if there's anything in there. And if any of your people have questions that they want to ask, just forward them to us and we'll answer them, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
The underground sound in a city or a town of frown. The business of a crown of the living that abounds of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts. The underground sound in a city or a town of frown. The business of a crown of the living that abounds of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts. The underground sound is the voice within to give ear to the spirit and to flee from sin, to live for Jesus and the praise of him by not selling out for the praise of men, to do whatever it takes, no matter what the cost, to keep pushing up the weight, carrying the cross, straight bench pressing sin, defend the word that lacks, and your best mention him, or then you gon' die. Cause the underground sound in a city or a town